Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Good, and joining me this week is an incredibly special guest, my friend Steve Bastek. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks again for having me, Jimmy. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. You know, Steve, I was looking at the last couple of podcasts that I've done recently, and the Terminator 2 one is doing the best by far. So I appreciate you being on to talk.
It's a classic, you know? Everybody loves it.
Yeah, I'm one of those people now where it's like, yeah, I get why it's a classic. Like, even though seeing it like 30 years later, I still got there. Yeah. You know, it's still happening at 40.
Well, maybe we roped in some new T2 fans after that. Maybe they checked it out.
That's the hope. And ever since that, I've had people come to me and they're like, you gotta watch RoboCop. And I'm like, okay, RoboCop. Like, so eventually we'll get to you, RoboCop. But Steve, thank you for coming back to talk about this, because I know we kind of, we talked about it at the very end of all the Terminator stuff, but finally kind of get in today to talk about Ghost of Tsushima. So for people who haven't played the game and want to go in completely blind, or people who are just, not really sure if they want to get spoiled on things, we'll try to do our best to say if there's a big story spoiler, which we'll probably try to get to a little bit later. Whereas in the beginning here, we're going to go over more of the mechanics, I think, and more of the characters, and not really dive too deep into that. But I just want to put that out there just in case there's somebody who's coming into this. But this is going to be a full-on discussion of this incredible, spoiler alert, game. I shouldn't, it's amazing. But by the time you're seeing this, there should be a review out from me, so there'll probably be some redundancy on my part. But I really wanted to let Steve have a chance to come out here and also talk about it, and to talk to someone else, and then have a dialogue with everybody else who's listening to this or watching this, or potentially both. But yeah, Steve, Ghost of Tsushima, for me, was a game that, it's been teased for so long. It was one of the reasons I got a PlayStation 4. Was this title that big of a deal for you, like it has been for me?
Yeah, it definitely was, because I'm a fan of Sucker Punch in general. I love the Infamous series. I thought Infamous Second Son was pretty solid gameplay wise, and that was kind of the first real PS4 exclusive that kind of was one of those reasons to buy a console, because at launch you really just kind of had Killzone, Shadowfall, and then Call of Duty Battlefield, and of course Knack. Can't forget Knack. Shout out Knack. But Second Son was kind of their first real reason to go out and buy a PS4. And it switches it up. You have, I think it was it Delson Rowe?
Delson Rowe, yes, dude.
And so he takes the place of Cole, the main protagonist. And I admit, I liked 1 and 2 way better, but the gameplay was much smoother. And so I kind of look at it the same way. I look at it as Naughty Dog kind of bookending, I would say, the PS3, where they kind of had Uncharted to start off the PS3, and then they had The Last of Us to close it out. I kind of look at Sucker Punch as kind of taking up that mantle, where they kind of kick it off with Infamous Second Son, and then they close it out with one of the last big exclusives with Ghost of Tsushima. And I thought they knocked it out of the park, because it was so different from Infamous. Infamous is very much, you're in the air, you're flying all over the place, superpowers galore, and this is a grounded approach, a lot of stealth, a lot of patience, especially in the standoff, where you have to kind of learn how to time yourself, time the movements of the enemies. It got really hard after a while. I went, we'll talk about it later, but I went through a standoff slump where I was seriously questioning if I'd ever win a standoff again.
Me too, dude.
All right, glad I'm not the only one.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was I suck at this game now. What happened?
But I thought that overall, I thought that their take on, the open world, because I feel a lot of people were criticizing it for saying, oh, it didn't really, do anything majorly different. It's I don't need all these new games to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
This game did the open world well, and it added some new elements. I loved the wind. I loved the fact that your screen wasn't covered in a bunch of crap.
Mm-hmm.
You can just flick up on the touchpad. The gust of wind shows you where you need to go, and those birds will come around. They'll chirp and be like, all right, something's over here. Let's go find that. So it made me want to explore. And the fact that you needed to explore certain areas to open those areas up on the map.
Yeah.
It wasn't like those typical ones like Ubisoft or even like Horizon Zero Dawn, where you go to like the tall necks or you go to like the radio towers and you clear those, and there's 12 radio towers on the map, and those will open up the map. So I like that it wasn't something as cliche as that. Like, I like that you actually had to do the exploring, and then as you cleared outhouses,
you do that too. Mongolian outhouses.
You just clear out a bunch of toilets. No, so when you clear out the outposts, and when you start discovering like little towns, that expands like the fog. So I love the discoverability. It made me want to keep going. I tweeted about it when I was early on that was the classic just one more mission game, and just one more mission turns to 15 more missions. And it's the reason why I ended up platinuming it, because it was one that I couldn't put down, and I didn't want to put down. I wanted to keep playing. I wanted to keep finding everything I could find. All in all, I was really, really surprised that they did something so different than what they used to do, and they nailed it. It was a very well done game from start to finish. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like for me too, I look at it because I enjoyed the infamous games as well. Mm-hmm. And my biggest complaint usually with those games is like they kind of feel floaty, but that's because you're a superpowered character who has like floating abilities. So like the jumps and some of the movement felt like kind of weird to me. So I was like, ugh. But they really get that, I think, in this. There's only been a few times where I was like, oh, that felt a little weird or whatever. But for the most part, it's such a departure. And I love it too, because my fear for a lot of these studios, and this happens sometimes, but we're starting to see kind of a renaissance with, I'm starting to like name off a few now here, where you look like at Guerrilla Games, CD Projekt Red, and Insomniac, it's not Insomniac, Sucker Punch. I keep getting these confused, but like really different types of games where there's just passion. You can taste it, basically. Yeah. Where you look at this and you're like, they could have just made superhero games for Sucker Punch for the rest of their lives, and they would have been just fine. I'm sure Sony would have been like, that's great. But they were like, you know what? No, we want to get into this new phrase I'm going to coin. It's called a period piece open world, or PPOW. And like they, you look at it and you say like, that's Assassin's Creed territory. Assassin's Creed, maybe Rockstar, a few other groups might try to do this where it's like, it's really, hyper focused on a time period and like trying to live out that fantasy. Mm-hmm. And it's a weird market, but at the same time, while there's been rumbling so much of like the Assassin's Creed that's going to be in Japan, I love that Sucker Punch was like, yeah, we're not waiting for that game, and we're just going to make a better version of what that would be. Yeah. And like what I've been hearing a lot, and I kind of agree to a certain extent as an Assassin's Creed fan, this feels like what Assassin's Creed could be. And like you said too, with the whole radio tower thing, or just like the eagle vision or whatever else, like the syncing, like that is fine, but they give you so much information, it doesn't feel as earned. Whereas in this game, you do kind of like, you're scouting around, you look around, and then the bird or a fox will lead you in a direction that you never thought possible. Mm-hmm. And you just like, oh, wow, it felt like discovery. And I haven't felt that personally since Breath of the Wild. Like, it made me want to just be like, what's over here? And I'm just like, like I kind of walk over and I'm like, oh, like, and you might find like, a shrine to get like another charm that makes you a little bit stronger, or you might be able to bow to a thing and like something cool will happen, like a bunch of animals will show up out of nowhere, and it's like stuff like that is just like, oh man. And you're right, they didn't have to reinvent the wheel. They made an incredibly competent single player game, which to be honest, I feel like I haven't played that in a long time. So for me, I was like, it was just nice to go into something that felt like it had a really true vision for these guys, and they accomplished it. Like, that's just, I thought that was so nice. It was refreshing. I don't know. It felt like I could breathe.
Oh, yeah. And to your point about like the discoverability, because one of the trophies is you need to complete all of the tales, all the missions, like including side missions and all that. And so at the end of the game, like I have pretty much the whole map cleared up. I've done all the main missions. I've done everything. And I'm like, why don't I have this trophy yet? And I'm not seeing anything on the map. And it's just because you need to find that person. Like, you need to find them in the world and discover that there is a mission to do. So at that point, because like that was the last thing I needed to do, so I just looked up the list of mission names and I tediously cross-referenced the ones I had with the ones on that list. And I was like, all right, don't have that one. And then once I did the second one, the trophy pinged, and I'm like, all right, there we go, I'm done. But I thought that was kind of cool because, like, in a way, it's like, all right, why can't I just see this? Like, I just want to do this. But they were never giving up on that idea that they want you to naturally find the stuff. They don't want you to be able to, go to a merchant and buy a map that shows you all the things. Like you need to willingly reach out and like do the work to find out, like, all right, there's an outpost here. I keep saying outhouse.
I love
there's an outpost here. There's a fox den here. I love all the fox dens, by the way.
Fox dens are great.
That was fantastic. The only thing I didn't like was the haikus. I got really sick of those after a while.
Okay.
Like I'd say like halfway through the game, it was just first one. I would just hit X on the first one. I'm just making whatever. And like that's my only real qualm with it, because I just don't think the haikus really fit, because obviously like it's been talked about plenty that it just wouldn't have existed in the time era that the game exists in.
Okay.
So like I feel like they just kind of like threw that in there just because, but I don't think it really added anything of value. And that was one of the ones where it's like, all right, I guess I'll go do another haiku. Whatever. Sure. But like that's my like one of my few qualms with it is like there are a couple of things where it got a little tedious and you're like, I could do with less of that and more of this.
Okay.
But again, like overall, it was a great game. I had a blast.
It's funny because like I love the haikus, just because I don't remember the last time in an open world game that they make you do like there's just like, it's not even a side mission, it's just like a little thing that you can do for a few seconds that just is like so relaxed, because more often than not in an open world game, like the little side thing you do or whatever, they're like, it's a crazy race and you better do it faster than everyone else. This was like,
oh my god,
and think about it. Like
every Far Cry game, my god, they love to just let's do races. No, like, let's not do races.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I'm fighting for my life over here, but they're like, do you want to race around against some other people, or just like a time trial? And you're like, I guess I have to.
It's like, sure, let's go race.
Yeah, no, but I understand that. I liked them. I think I only found them, like I did a good number of them, but I think if I would have done all of them, or if I would have hit multiple in rapid succession, but between that and like the bamboo strikes and like
those were fun,
and the hot springs, I felt like those three things were very like, you have to kind of be like peaceful, and like the hot springs is very just you like hit a button, right? But like the other stuff is just kind of like you have to take a break and like just be in the world for a second, which I loved because it made me like think about like my character more, as opposed to being like the races or like some other kind of superfluous side activity. But the bamboo strikes are just fire, man.
One of the hot springs made me laugh out loud, because obviously once you get in, it goes reflect on. It gives you two options. And one of them was just so abruptly, reflect on my dead horse. And
oh my gosh, yeah.
I just thought it was absolutely hysterical. I didn't do that one. I just did whatever the second one was. I was like, I don't want to reflect on my dead horse.
Yeah, which I didn't think they needed to do that in the game. I was like, was this Red Dead Redemption 2?
I know, just pulling a Red Dead, just killing off horses.
I had my sister stop by during one of the streams, and of course she shows up when one of the options for sitting in a hot spring, and we both said it out loud jokingly at the same time, is like a lover's touch. And I was like, I love it, because Jin, he's like sitting down and he's like, oh man, I haven't felt the touch of a woman in a long time. And like Jin, this like pure honorable samurai, is like, oh my gosh, like I've just been fighting the good fight here, and I'm still a human, like like just the inner workings. It's like that, or like reflect on like betrayal or something. And I was like, the lover's touch one seems kind of flipping funny right now. So but man, this is something that blows my mind too. The side missions in this game for the other characters, the main, like the kind of your primary buddies for the most part. Which these quest lines, after a few of them, are just optional, I think, right? Like it seems like they're optional, because I looked back at them and there's like the main story quest, and then they have a few times where it's like you have to meet them and maybe do a thing for them, or two things. But then it's like, if you want to, you can join up with them. And I thought it was a prerequisite to get them to like join your cause, like to do as many as you could before they would do that. And it isn't, but I thought some of those side quests and missions with them felt so big and cool that it made me care about them even more. And it felt like main missions. Like for most other video games, like open world games, these side quests felt like main missions in those games. I was like, this is nuts. Like I was like, what, are you kidding me? Like
honestly, the way I approached it is I'd maybe do a couple main missions, and then I would clear out all of the side missions in the area before doing the rest of the main missions, because like you said, they were like the heart and soul of the game. Like I mean, Jin Sakai is fine. He's a fine character, I don't think he's, as far as like PS4 exclusive protagonists, like especially the ones we've seen lately, as far as that goes, I wouldn't put him in like the top 5. Like I really feel like Jin's strength is that he's a conduit for all of these other really good stories, because like Sensei Ishikawa's story, where it's all about like chasing after Tomoe, and the ending of that just turns out to be this amazingly like bittersweet ending, because you find out like Tomoe was never backstabbing anyone. She was basically doing what she had to do to survive her whole life, and now she's like, I'm done with this. I want to go live my life in peace. And I thought, because compared to Lady Masako, oh my God, that story was absolutely heartbreaking. So like you go from that to that. I thought that was like a nice little reprieve, because I think that I did the Lady Masako one first. And once you find out what was going on with her, with like her sister, and basically her sister kills her whole family, or arranges to have her whole family killed, like it's so devastating. But the way that those characters were portrayed, like the voice acting was all amazing. And of course, like we've already mentioned 2 other characters without mentioning the best side character, Yuna. Like Yuna, her story from start to finish was, I would say, I would definitely put it as more intriguing than Jin's. Okay. Like I feel like Jin's was the typical, my father died, I felt responsible because I could have helped him, which I kind of feel is a bit ridiculous. It's like, Jin, you're like 11. Like, what are you going to do? You're not going to stop this. So I felt like that was kind of a stretch. And then the whole inner turmoil where it's like, do I be a samurai? Do I be a ghost? It's like, dude, you got to do whatever you have to do to defeat the people who are trying to murder your town's inhabitants. Like, so some of that just felt like the typical kind of storyline you would see from a protagonist. So in that sense, I felt like that was kind of played out. But like I said, through Jin, you get to interact with all these other amazing characters, and I felt their stories were the true heart and soul of the game. The changes that they go through, because you have about like 9 missions with each of them, except like Kenji. I think Kenji might be like,
it's like
6 or 7,
or something, or maybe 5.
Yeah. But you have so many missions and so much time with each of them that you get to see like their full story arcs play out the same way you see Jin's story arc play out, and so it just made me want to keep doing those missions, because I wanted to find out what happens next. And like, I was devastated when Taka came to, when you get captured and Taka comes to rescue you after you freed Taka, after Yuna's like, we got to go. Like we can finally do what we've been trying to do. And Taka's like, I'm willingly going to go help him because I believe in his cause. And so when he loses his life because of basically you, and then you have to go and tell Yuna that was one of the most like gut-wrenching scenes.
Yeah.
I'd put that one right up there with when at the beginning of The Last of Us, when Sarah dies in Joel's arms.
Oh, sure. Well, okay. You said a lot there and I love it, because I have like stories to go along with your stories. So, okay, start Lady Masako. We've seen that kind of like one of the biggest moments with them, with the 2 of them, in one of the E3 presentations. They actually fight each other, and I lost that fight the first time.
No kidding.
And I saw her kill me, and it felt really weird, and it's something I've never been able to shake. But because like Jin didn't see that, like every time I worked with Masako in the future, I was like, you if you had a chance to kill me, you took it. But I love her story. I really think that's so cool. And for me, my favorite side character was Sensei Ishikawa, because I thought he was so fascinating. There's something that's crazy that, okay, I played through the whole game, and I've been going back through the first little portion of it to capture stuff for review, or I did. And they talk about, there's like this one guy you meet in a village who tries to send you up to where Sensei Ishikawa's like estate is. And the guy's like, oh, I heard he like destroyed a whole pirate ship with one arrow. And Jin says, well, no. He's like, but he did, he killed the captain of that ship from a distance, and it rooted like a whole bunch of ships for a while. And then at the end of the freaking game, with his story and Tomoe's off on a boat on a ship, and that Sensei Ishikawa could drop her. He could just, because his story, like that presence. And I was like, maybe they didn't mean for that.
And Tomoe knows too.
Yeah.
Tomoe knows too.
Yeah.
She's staring right at him.
Yeah. And it's like, maybe they put that line in the beginning just because they could, but it was like, oh, it makes even more sense. It's like even more heartbreaking now. And there's like a little sense kind of in the middle of like, oh, like, maybe there was more between them than just like an apprentice thing. And it's like, no, he was very much like, I wanted her to be my daughter. And then you start to get this kind of sense of like his relationship with her, and then Shimura's, relationship with Jin. And I love that. I think that's so cool. And I know what you mean. Like Jin maybe isn't like, it's more of like he's just kind of there to like see these different things play out. But the way, and maybe we'll get into a little more like with the story, but like the way this ends, this tale ends throughout the whole thing, it felt very much like Civil War, Captain America Civil War. And that, for me, was, like, the most heartbreaking thing, because they could have done this in a whole different way. They could have been like, Jin kills every Mongol barehanded, no sword. Yeah. But it was like, no, we're going to do something different, and it's going to, like, it sticks with me of, like, how sad that is, but, like, also him, like, learning to, like, change who he is throughout all of this, and, like, war changes people, and, like, oh, man. And in the beginning, too, when, like, you'd use stealth tactics, and, it would just, like, flash back to you as a kid, and it'd be like, Lord Shimura's like, we never strike from the shadows, or whatever. And you're like, and he says,
like, yeah, but you see how good I was?
You're like, I stabbed that guy so well. And then he's like, I'm sorry, Uncle. And, like, he's just saying it to himself. He's like, Uncle, please forgive me. He's, like, slitting throats and stuff, and you're like, but, like, it's just so good. But yeah, the heart and soul of this game, I really think, are the characters, which in most other open world games, I'll be honest with you, Steve, I don't remember pretty much anybody. I love Horizon Zero Dawn. Do not ask me to name any of those characters. I'm so sorry. It's not their fault. It's just that the Sun King, he's one of them.
Stylus is the one that sticks out the most, just because he's the most intriguing.
For sure, yeah. But these guys are
Lynch
like...
Riddick.
Exactly. Like, I just love it. Like, even Kenji, like, who's a kind of a minor character, there's still something interesting about him and his relationship, not only with, like, Jin and Yuna, but with Taka. And, like, that there's a backstory there. Like, man, and Ryuzo, dude. Like,
oh, man. Like,
come on. Like, I thought I screwed up in the end of Act 1 because he didn't show up and all of your allies are going to show up. Sorry, spoilers, they're going. And he didn't show up, and all my other buddies did. And at the end of your acts, you normally get, like, all of your group comes up, and it's like, it's optional. You can go talk to all of them. So you can, like, go and talk to each of them, which I always did, because I'm like, I want to see what's going on. But Ryuzo didn't show up, and I was like, oh, maybe I screwed something up. And I was like, oh, no, that's, like, a major story thing. And I was like, oh, no. I was like, Ryuzo, no. Like, please, say it ain't so, buddy.
I could not wait to duel him. I was like, you son of a bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, I'm gonna remember this.
Yes, exactly.
I'm coming for you, Ryozu.
Yeah. Oh man, that duel's great though, isn't it?
Oh, all of them were.
All the duels are great.
I thought that they did enough to make them feel different. I will say though, like by the end, like once you get like Ghost Stance and you max out your resolve, there was one duel I did where I just like spammed like Ghost Stance and then just the L1 R1 like the quick strike.
Oh, sure.
I think like Heaven's Sword, like the Heavenly Sword, and I literally didn't get touched and killed.
Was that like the optional? Like, is that the optional duel one?
No, well, there are. I think there's like 5 duels that you can do.
Yeah.
And if you do them, you get a trophy. I don't remember which one. It was just like one of those like random ones. And I remember I just had Ghost Stance like ready to go. And so I was like, all right, let's see what happens. And I just went and I was like, wow, this guy's not going to touch me. But I love the duels because I am not very good at like, Soulsborne style games. However, I do respect like the combat. Like I have played a little bit of Bloodborne, and when you get into a rhythm, you do feel good. It's fun. But with this, I like that it's a little more forgiving.
Yeah, for sure.
But it is that same kind of style. There's like the patience with parrying, and I loved how you could rank him up. Like, you could kind of figure out your strengths, and so you could kind of go with the ghost weapons, or you could go like I ranked up the power stances as quickly as I possibly could. I unlocked those as quickly as I possibly could.
Yes.
Like I went and tried to clear out like as many outposts as I at like an early stage just so I could get all 4 stances. And I loved interchanging in between combat. They made that so fluid. Honestly, like the combat was one of the things that kept me playing. Like I would just kind of ride around or walk around, look for people, start a standoff. If I win it, cool. If I don't, let's fight.
Yeah.
And it just kept me going back for more. Like the combat never got old for me. And as you kept ranking up, it got a lot more satisfying.
Oh, totally. I remember like thinking later on, I didn't realize exactly how this worked because they're like, all right, if you want to learn these other stances, and the stances we're talking about, there are 4 of them: stone, water, air, and moon. And basically they're kind of to counter very specific other type of melee combatants. And like what they tell you to do is they're like, you can either kill or like watch a warlord doing their thing in a camp or an outpost, and you can learn from them. And I didn't realize until later on that like I could watch a warlord and then gain like a point of it, and then kill a warlord and gain another point, because you have to get in a certain number before you unlock that stance.
Yeah.
Because I was just off in warlords. I'd see him and I was like, I'm gonna kill him. I wouldn't like sit there and
stand off.
watch. Yeah, I was like, oh, cool. But yeah, switching between all that was great. It only was annoying in the beginning if you have like one or two, maybe even three, and you're using one because you want to kill a guy, but then another guy hits you and the game like pauses. It's like, if you switch to the water stance, you'll be able to destroy the shield guy. And you're like, yeah, I know. And they're like, switch to the water stance. And you're like,
I got it.
You're like, I understand the concept of the game. And they're like, are you sure? You should probably switch. But no.
Like, did we mention that water stance is just a button away?
Yeah, exactly. You're like, it's so nice. But I was playing through the beginning part again, and I unlocked that. And I got that like 5. It's like you hold like heavy attack with water, and then you do it, and then you tap like triangle 4 more times, and it's like a bunch of quick strikes against a shield guy. That just like makes you go from like doing nothing to shield guys to like, I'm gonna kill everybody. Like, you're just flying through them, and they're just like, I can't.
I loved it. Yeah,
I can't. And I loved
that was one of my favorite moves.
Oh, dude, yeah, thank you. Like, it's such a good move. And then later on, they introduce like the brutes with shields that act basically like a shield guy on steroids. So it's like the same thing, but the guy's got like 2 feet on you, and you're just like hacking through him, and he's like, please stop. Man, I love switching the stances. I thought they're really good. The one guy I hated the most, though, I hate the spear guys. Even after I got all the stuff to beat them, I was like, I hated the spearmen. For some odd reason, they were the bane of my existence. Because
one of the rank ups you get with the water stance is it's water stance that fights spear guys, isn't it?
That's the air stance.
The air stance.
Yeah.
Getting my stances mixed
It's okay.
up.
Don't worry about it. I think that's what
I'm not a real ghost. Anywho.
No, if you're a real ghost, you never fight him up front. You just stab him in the back.
That's true. So there's one of those that you can basically just parry anything. Like, if they just come at you, you'll automatically just step to the side and they'll go. So I'd say some of the rank ups got like, it does become like OP. Like I said, you can straight up win a duel without taking a single hit if you have all your resolve and like a ghost stance ready to rock. However, I feel like that's kind of the point with those games, like with this particular game, because it's not supposed to be like a Souls type game. It's not supposed to be that punishing combat. It is supposed to be like, you're on a journey. You start from, you get thrown from the bridge. You have your armor stripped from you. You lose your sword. You're half dead. You got to go get everything back. And so, like, as you're going and as you're recruiting more people for your cause, like, yeah, you should be getting more powerful. So I liked how the progression worked. If you work at it, like if you do all the side missions, then yeah, you can definitely be overpowered by the time that last mission comes up. However, I would say, like, because I pretty much had just about everything for the stuff that I use, like the armors that I'd use for fighting were always ranked up. My sword was ranked up. My dagger was ranked up. I think my bows were too. So I had all that good to go. And even still at the end, that final fight's still no joke. Like it is still pretty challenging. So I think it is one of those ones that it is worth doing all the side stuff for, because it helps with the progression and it definitely makes combat later on a lot more fun, because you can start to like tinker and like, try to distract people and like throw the bombs and like see what happens. So like there is a lot of fun things you can do with it. So like I said, like the combat never got old.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And as someone who's trying to kind of rush through the first part of the game again without doing the side stuff, it is way harder. And I think the game has a better flow if you actually do the objective stuff on the side of the side objectives, because if you don't, you're going to have to replay these parts again and again, because you're like, man, these big story missions are kind of hard when you don't know exactly or don't have all the skills to take on all these guys. The duels, by the way, I loved, and there was one where I didn't have ghost stance and I didn't have a lot of resolve, so I kind of hammered it out and it wouldn't let me it like saved, and when I died I just kept coming back into the duel. So I had to just like watch the guy like 3 or 4 times, and then I just like worked around it, and it was so cool because like the game, even in one of the duels earlier on, there's like a guy who's taunting you and he's like, what are you doing? And Jin just says, I'm learning. And that's what the game is. You kind of just like watch somebody and you're like, all right, kind of Souls-like, where you're like, all right, I know what your attacks are now, and now I can get around you. And like you start doing that and you're like, it's almost like you just learned, and they were like, how did you do that? And I was like, I just kept watching. Just like, I'm watching you, buddy.
Yeah.
So good. So rewarding.
It really was, because there was the rhythm element where you did have to like get into the flow. But like I said, it was a little bit more forgiving. But yeah, it was still challenging. Like there were plenty of times where I was losing duels, had to do a few of them multiple times. And like I said, there was a good portion where I was in a severe standoff slump. Like I think I lost like 20 in a row. It was terrible.
Well, the hot moment when they start doing the standoffs, and basically what that is, for people who don't know what it is like you basically might see some Mongols in the distance, and you can up on the D-pad, and Jin like gets off his horse here, he's running on the ground, he's like, I'm here, like who wants to fight me, you cowards? And you go up and you hold triangle, and one of the Mongols will come up to you, and when they raise and attack their weapon, you have to let go of triangle, and you can kill them in one hit. And later on, you can upgrade that and get armor where you can basically take out like 5 guys doing that awesome. In a row. If you do it right, like you can't, it's not a give me though, because like if you go too early, you take like all your health is lost basically except for a sliver. If you go too late, you get a chunk of that health knocked off. But when they introduce the ability for Mongols to psych you out, and they'll do this, they'll like sit there and they'll be like, huh, like that. And the second they started doing that, that's when it started to go downhill really quickly for me, because I was like, what? How did you, like, you're psyching me out? Like, because that was so hard for my brain to get over, because I was so used to just being like, this is going to be a cakewalk. And then later on, I was like, nope, can't do that.
Because the timing was always different. Sometimes they'd pump fake like twice. Sometimes they would go in the first one. Sometimes they pump fake once. And so I liked how they did have that in there, because, yeah, eventually you can just, if you wanted to, mow down entire groups with a standoff. And yeah, that can get pretty boring after a while if you're just hitting one button every time you fight. So I like how they did add that element, because like I said, like it made it really challenging, because you never knew. And since they all were different, like sometimes you'd get one of the big brutes, sometimes you get a spear guy, sometimes you get one of the double sword guys. And so with all that, they move differently. They have like different first steps, different attack types. So you have to like start remembering how they each go, and then really like pay attention to like that front foot and see when it starts to go.
Sure. My pro tip, or what I started doing, is I started looking at the very tops of the enemies' heads, and when they moved more than just like a little for their little psych out, I knew that to like let it go. Like weirdly that worked, especially on the bald guys. I'd be like, when I see that chrome dome move just a little too much, I'm gonna let go and I'm gonna kill you. But sometimes if you get the streak up to like 5 with like the Sakai clan armor or whatever, the camera will like whirl about to like focus on a dude who's behind you, and if you're like in tall grass or they're in tall grass or something, you're like you might go way too early or way too late, because you're like, what's happening? Because you're like, all right, I gotta, where are they? And I remember kind of whiffing, because I get like 3 or 4 of them down. I was like, what the heck?
I died a couple times that way.
Yeah, and you're like, that's great. You're like, I'm this cool guy. And like this person you're saving, maybe on the street or on the road, they're like, oh my God, I'm going to be saved. And you just watch, you just get taken out. You're like, oh, well, they tried.
Oh, yeah, I did love when you'd go into an outpost and they would have like a bear captive and just like shooting the lock open. Dude, and be like, all right, bear, go nuts.
There was a few times in the wilderness where I saw that, where I'd be like, oh, Mongols are fighting. I was like, I wonder who they're fighting. There'd be against like a bear, and I'd just kind of be watching. I was like, I'm just going to see where this goes. And then I would usually help the bear and then just like leave. I was like, I'd shoot an arrow or two and I'm like, see ya. Before we get into the stealth and the archery, I want to say this though too. Besides the heavy attacks, every light attack in this game actually feels good, because more often than not in like games such as this, action games, light attacks never feel super good to me. This one felt so good, and like the way he moves and like finishes these people up, because like a lot of times I think what they want you to do is to heavy attack through a guard and then just use light attacks a ton, because and you could do the heavy attacks still too, but like, man, those light attacks feel so freaking good.
Yeah, and once you get the parrying down, like if you have the perfect parry and they just open up with like a quick strike, oh man, it's too good.
Yeah, I had it happen like once or twice. I wanted this to happen more, where somebody would be going over like their head like this, and I had the stone stance like puncture stab thing, and he just like right in their chest, and they're just like, and you're like, ha, and then just cleaning off your sword in the various ways. Like, I wish the touchpad wasn't on here, because I wish there were just buttons for it, because like there's been a few times where I'd like hit to do something and it was like the wind is blowing, and I'm like, no, I didn't say the wind, I said the flute. Or I was like, I said to clean the sword, or they're like, you can't bow right now, and I'm like, I didn't want to bow, I just wanted to clean my sword or whatever. But yeah, I really loved all those little things you could do on there. I thought that was super cool. And I did not unlock the other flute stuff. I feel bad about that. I've only got one song Apparently you can unlock a bunch of other ones. I didn't.
I've had a few. There's one you need to win. Win to get a trophy. There's one that you need to play at Taka's grave.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
that's a killer. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I can't. And Taka. All the characters in this game, I feel like were just so good. Even Koten Khan, which for me, like after watching like Marco Polo, there's only 2 seasons of it on Netflix. It's around the same time period as all that stuff. So like I just take it as like kind of like in the same kind of world. Like, oh man, it's so good. So I want to get to the archery a little bit here. I like it. I didn't get I didn't get the longbow for a while. My friend kind of told me about it, which felt very like elementary school, like you should go home on your N64 or your Game Boy and try this later type of thing. But he's like, yeah, like if you want to go get the longbow, you have to kind of do this little tail and you have to go along the beach or whatever, like the cove. And I was like, oh cool, I'm gonna go check that out. And I didn't look it up, and I did the Yamato tales, which the Yamato tales like are these amazing, like these kind of like myths that this musician will play for you, but it's like this really cool like ink like style drawn, like I don't know.
That was like a nice little callback to like the original Infamous cutscenes.
Yes,
like
exactly, dude.
They were all like the comic strip style.
Dude,
I
for
love that.
Sure. Yeah, and I just loved getting to the longbow and stuff, and like both were still good. Like they didn't just say like, all right, you got the longbow now, it's just better than the half bow. It was like, nope, you want to use that longbow because you see a guy who's like way far away and like,
oh my god, it's so satisfying when you nail them and they just go flying off too.
Yeah, I've had a few where they would be running fully away from me, and I'm just like, I just did that moment in like Mulan where it's like, how many people does it take to deliver a message? Just like one. And you just like, you hit this poor dude who's just like, you're like, he's like, goodbye. Yeah.
Before we get too into the archery, quick sidetrack. Did you ever power kick someone off of a ledge?
So like kind of Sparta style. Maybe. I don't know if I did. Oh man, I didn't. I use my kicks more in the combos for the big boys, but I didn't often use that like charge kick to knock somebody back.
If you like sneak behind someone that's like looking over a cliff and just charge it up, it's so funny.
That is hilarious. So does that alert people, or did they just like, does it not?
It would if like they land on someone, but like if you're like, say for example, it's one of those like near like a mountain ridge.
Yeah.
If say like they're on the outskirts of it, if you kick them off and there's nobody over there, they won't hear it.
That dude, I didn't even think to do that. I'm always just like, I'll just stab him. But dude, that's just charge up your super kick.
Oh yeah, there's a trophy attached to that one too. I didn't know because I did this before I started like looking through the trophies, because I don't do that until I've beat the game, because there's always spoilers in those.
Yeah, totally.
And so like I just saw him standing there and I had the power kick unlocked and I was like, oh, this will be fun. And it was very fun.
Dude, I can attest. I feel like those kicks, especially in the combos to like take down the brutes, make you feel like you're almost breakdancing. Because you're like attack and then you'd be like kick and then attack and then kick, and it's just like, wow, I look pretty sweet. Like I need to go do that now. And if I do it, I'll try to film it and send it to you. I'll be like, Steve, this one's kick him off.
There you go.
But yeah, so the archery stuff, like, there was the longbow had like the heavy arrows, the explosive arrows, and then the half bow had the fire arrows and the regular arrows. Those are the only ones I got. I don't know if there were any others that I didn't get to. I'm
trying to think. I don't think there was any other ones.
I know there were charms that could make them like poison your arrows sometimes. I was like,
well, because eventually you get like a blow dart,
yes.
And then like you have like the poison darts with that stuff. I pretty much, because honestly, I only used like fire or explosive arrows like if I was really in a pinch or if it was like a challenge that called for it. I loved the sticky bombs. Yeah. I was a big fan of those because like if you got one on one of their shields, you could like knock out a good amount of people in a quick area.
Yeah.
But honestly, I didn't use the ghost weapons that often. Like I probably, to my detriment, I probably didn't use them that often. Because I was such a stubborn asshole where I was like, I just got to keep fighting. Like I got no health, but I got no resolve, but I'll just keep dodging. I'll figure it out. And realistically, I probably just should have thrown like a black powder bomb, and but I don't know. I had more satisfaction from actually getting into sword fights. There was one outpost that was pretty egregious because it was one of those ones that's like the 3-tiered ones where like you have to do a ton of stuff.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
You gotta like free prisoners and like free falcons, and you gotta get the flags and kill the warlord and do all these things.
Yeah.
And I remember one I just got seen too early, and I was just running around grabbing all the other stuff. And I was like, all right, I'll just keep running away from them. I'll grab all the stuff I need, then I'll just fight. And when I got ready to fight, I looked back and there's like 30 of them just chasing me. I'm like, This is going to be a tough fight.
Dude, it's so funny that you say that because I was the exact same way. And only since I went back to play it again and like tried to rush through have I felt like I needed to use like all the quickfire weapons because I often forgot that they were there. Not that they were bad. They were all really good. I was like, I love using the combat and I love like working around it. And I felt like, especially the first half of the game where you're still kind of holding on to that like sentimentality of like what an honorable samurai would do. I was like, I don't want to use this stuff because I wouldn't feel like Jin would want to use that.
Yeah.
So I get out my flute and I'd walk into battle because I was a pure samurai, and like they would see me and they come running at me, but I wouldn't use those things until later on, and then I would use them like, okay, this makes it. These are like the superpowers kind of besides like your like resolve burning capabilities that you can use, and they were great, but I'm totally with you. It was just way more fun to be like, all right, I'm gonna take all 5 of you down, and you're not gonna do much to me. It's like. Just it felt so good. Just the combat itself was just so good, and it also prevented me from using archery a ton, which I love the slow motion. That's great, and like the noise it makes when you get like a headshot. And the stealth stuff was good too. I just like didn't feel like I wanted to use it. I was like, I'm just gonna walk in unless there were prisoners, or hostages. I would normally be like, I'm gonna walk right on in. Like I'm like, come and get me, boys. So yeah, dude, I'm totally with you. I didn't use that much.
Well, yeah, I didn't do much with the ghost weapons, but I did try to do stealth, like when it called for it, just because, like, I preferred to have like lesser battles. Like, that 30-person battle was a tough one, but honestly, like, I prefer to like go around. Like, obviously, like I love stealth games. Like Metal Gear Solid is my favorite franchise. Like, I love anytime you give me like stealth gameplay, I'm all for it. So that was fine with me, and that's why like I never had an issue with like, oh man, I'm not going to be an honorable samurai. It's like, no, like you got to do what you got to do in this situation. Like the Mongols are going to kill you all. So if I got to sneak around, and by the way, if Yuna's teaching me about this, Yuna knows what's up. She's a survivor. She's been dealing with a bunch of shit her whole life.
Yeah.
And so she's like, look, this is what you got to do to survive. And she literally brings him back to life. So I'm going to take her word for it. And honestly, the ghost method was great. And that's why, like, I had, in terms of the story, like, I always was just so annoyed with Lord Shimura. Like, it just felt way too on the nose about, like, kind of what goes on in, like, the political climate, where, obviously, I don't want to get, like, super political. We're talking about a video game here. But with, like, just old people just not embracing new ideas and change for the better. And like, I just like every time you're like, that's not the way. It's like, yeah, but your way means you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like you're not gonna have any people. You're all gonna die. Like that's what's gonna happen. And so it was just such a simple concept where Jin is like, look, I understand that you don't agree with what I'm doing, but these people do because I'm fighting for these people. It's not like, there was definitely some selfishness in there for Jin for sure. Like he had his like his reasons, his redemption, all that. But at the end of the day, like he really was rallying these people to try to fight back. And like, look at the crew he rounded together to take on a Mongol army who were decimating the lands. So with that, I was just like, man, you just gotta step aside. Like especially after like Act 2, when all of a sudden, like I loved when Jin just goes in and goes ghost stance and just like slices the Mongol's head off. And he's like, is this your leader? Like, I thought that was amazing. And then Lord Shimmer's like, Jin, I'm like, come on. He's like an angry parent who just caught the kids drinking at the house. And it's like, no, like that was awesome. Look how terrified they are now. They're not gonna mess with us because they're terrified. And then he becomes a wanted man by his own uncle. Like, because there was one line, like this is one of the only lines that I specifically like wrote down because I think it encapsulates the mood of the game very well, but like I said, it also it's like really on the nose for kind of what goes on there. And Jin, I forget who he says it to, but Jin just goes, "I'm not asking you to go back. I'm asking you to keep your faith and move forward." And I thought that was pretty much what summed up the theme of this game perfectly. I'm not asking you to think about like what happened in the past. Your past doesn't matter now, because what matters now is what we do in the present and how we move forward. And I just thought that was one of the more powerful messages that the game portrayed.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Harkening back here just to touch on a few things that you said. First off, that moment you're talking about where when you get the ghost dance, basically, that happened to me while I was streaming it, and I'm really happy somebody clipped that for me, and I put it in the review because it was a genuine moment of me going, and maybe this is just the crazy sadist in me, but like that moment happened, and I was like, oh my god. And then it was like, okay, that was amazing. And then they're like, here's the ghost dance, and you're like, oh my gosh. So it's like black and white, and it's like, you kill people in one hit, it goes red, and the only way to get this super meter is like you have to kill a certain amount of guys and not take a hit, and that's how the super meter works. Because if you get hit, like it's not like Devil Trigger, it kind of builds up, you use it and it's gone, it'll come back. This is like you can use it if you're good, like a lot. But that moment I was like, that spoke to me. I was like, oh, here we go. But you're right. Like Lord Shimura, it gets a little annoying. I think they had to have him do it to be like the classic, because like someone would have been like, well, this samurai is not a samurai game. But he does get a little annoying. I get where like they have him, and it's like Koten Khan on the other end, and then everybody else falls in between you. And there's one line from Sensei Ishikawa later on, like an optional like talk to him before one of the missions, or something like that, and Jin says something to him. He's like, what are you saying? I shouldn't do that. And Ishikawa is actually like a samurai. He's like respected and stuff. And he says, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. So like Ishikawa even is kind of like, I'm an honorable samurai, but at the same time, we got to do things sometimes we don't like. And like, I felt like he got it like a little bit more than Shimura did,
Yeah, I think that was kind of his arc, because I think at the beginning he was a stubborn. He was like Shimura, and like as things go, especially with Tomoe at the end, because like you could tell that he was changed by what happened, because if he wasn't, he would have shot her with the arrow, like 100%.
Yeah.
And so I agree that I think he was a lot more rational in the whole kind of outlook on, how should we, approach this? It's like, you should approach it by doing whatever you can to take out this conquering force.
Yeah. Well, I love too that like you have ramifications. So when you get your blow dart, you get your poison dart and your berserk dart, which are basically kind of copies almost from Assassin's Creed, like 4, Black Flag, Rogue and stuff, which is great because I know them. The big difference here is if you use a poison dart on somebody, it'll kill them, but it freaks all the other Mongols out. And if you use a berserk dart, that's kind of your like regular one where for some reason they just know to go. It's so funny in games like this. Imagine if you were working with a guard for all these years and he just one day he won't go, "Argh!" And instead of asking him what's wrong, you just ran at him and attacked him. You're like, I'll kill you.
It's like, oh, he's going crazy. Yeah. Time to kill him.
But I like that the poison actually had this kind of ramification. It was something the Mongols didn't have before. And then it was good. It was really useful in this one circumstance, but then they learned from it and they were going to take it and use Jin's family. Like, I forget the name of his nanny. It starts with a Y. But she had like this poison recipe and the berserk dart recipe, I guess. So they were going to take this information.
Oh, Yuriko.
Yuriko, thank you.
Or Yuriko.
Yuriko, not to be confused with, there's another one who sounds like Yu-Gi-Oh! But anyway, what happens is they're like talking about taking this poison and using it with the Mongols and using it on the homeland, like to attack the mainland. And I was like, oh, that's so cool, because you like see the ramifications, and that's like the thing that breaks them up. And I love that like Lord Shimmer's like, here's the deal, Jin. He's like, it's either you or Yuna. The Shogun's gonna want somebody's head on a platter. And I love that he's like right then, and while they don't get together necessarily, I feel like Jin's just like, I love Yuna, man. She saved my life. Like, he's like, you know what? He's like, take me. And he's like, Yuna, you need to run like right now. And he's like, I'm fine. Take me in. And then he's like, I'm not going to be your son. And the whole like him going to be like Lord Shimmer's son and adopted and all this stuff and how that falls apart. It was just like so painful for me to watch, because it's like, oh God, like
that was a tough end to Act 2. That was pretty heartbreaking.
Yeah, and then like obviously segueing that into the ending, like I said, very Captain America Civil War. This is like so ending stuff, but like the way that wraps up between those two. I don't know what you chose as far as the ending goes between Lord Shimura and Jin, but I loved that whole ending. It felt like a really condensed, small version of the epilogue to like Red Dead Redemption 2, where it was kind of like this. Oh, it's kind of, but I was like,
oh yeah,
really
because the epilogue to Red Dead Redemption 2 is like 10 hours long.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It goes on forever, and you're like, oh, this would have been nice if it would have been like a 30-minute or an hour-long thing. But in Red Dead, it's like you're gonna build the whole house.
I was like, I'm still building. I know how this ends for him. Why am I building this house?
You're like, wait, the Pinkertons have to show up. But I love that this one, you kind of have this like really sweet moment, and I thought he was, for a second I was like, okay, maybe it's gonna be like he goes, Jin goes to talk to Lord Shimura, and he kind of says like, hey, this is gonna be my life now. I know we can't really, we're not gonna be father and son necessarily, but I just want to know that I care about you and I love you, and I still want to have some sort of relationship. And then kind of at the end where they're both just like, oh, this is our last day together, and it's like, what? It's like, oh my gosh. But that fight is great. And finally a choice that seems to matter, because you get like little dialogue choices throughout the game. I don't think they matter too much. You just get different like little responses for people.
Yeah.
This one finally mattered, because I was like, oh, this is like an, Sucker Punch. They like to do choices a little bit. So I don't know what you chose to do. I chose to really piss him off and spare him, because I figured I was like, I would think that's kind of what Jin would do, and I was trying to roleplay kind of as Jin, and I was like, I can't kill you, you son of a gun. So you killed him.
So yeah, I did kill him. Oh yeah, he wanted to go out, and so I was like, all right, man, I'll give you.
Did he stab himself in the stomach and he chop his head off?
No, you just do a strike.
They didn't do seppuku in the whole. I thought seppuku
was
like, in the game. I thought
he like he's like kneeling down, and then Jin just gives him like one strike, and that's it. But yeah, I mean, he wanted to go out honorably, so I figured I'd give him one last wish after the guy tried to kill me and have me arrested. So
that's true. Well, it's funny. That's how like Koten Khan knocked him out in the beginning of the game too. They like kind of have this whole like, is Lord Shimura dead? Like at the beginning, because he slashes him, and there's like no visible mark on him. So I wouldn't. Dude, he's probably not dead. You probably didn't kill him. You probably did that slash. He's invulnerable.
So what happens if you spare him?
It's great. So basically, Jin's like, you know what? Like, I'm not gonna do this, and I'm gonna go like live my life. And I think Lord Shimmer basically says like, well, like you're basically starting a rebellion without trying to, and he's just like, that's just too bad. He's like, you're gonna have to friggin' deal with it. Like, he's just kind of like, I'm sorry, I have to go.
Put on sunglasses, deal with it.
It was so good because, again, I was like streaming this thing, and it was like really emotional. I thought it was so well done. But I do think, at the end of the day, like Lord Shimmer wants to die, he wanted to die by Jin's hand, right?
Yeah.
That's like the way his life is. Like, this is how it should go. But it hasn't gone that way the whole time. So I was like, why start now? I was like, why start now?
I actually felt a little bad for him, because like he was like, if I go back, like they'll like basically ostracize me, or they'll kill me.
Sure.
So I was like, all right, yeah, I guess if anyone's gonna do it, might as well be me. So
yeah.
I didn't even hesitate though. I was like, yeah, you're out.
I was so compelled. I was like, dang it, I like you. I liked Lord Shimura, even though he pisses me off so much. I was like,
he was a good character. Like it was a well done character, but like I felt at the end of the game, I felt no connection to him.
Sure.
I felt a lot of connections to other characters, but with Lord Shimmer, I was like,
sure.
See you later.
Do you feel like this? I felt a little bit like his face, and I know all their faces are different. Like every character in this game has a different face. His face looked like it looked like not the most traditional, or there's something about him that looked like off. Like it seemed like he was the one character that didn't like fit in as well with everybody else. Maybe that's just me being crazy, but like
I feel like he didn't. I feel like with him, he just didn't look as old as I thought he was. Sure. I don't know. But yeah, I honestly I thought the character designs were all like, this was a gorgeous game. Yes. Like, good lord, they really maximized the potential of the PS4. And like the thing that blows my mind too, this is a pretty big game. A lot going on.
Yeah,
it's only like 30 gigabytes. Meanwhile, Call of Duty's over here with like a 9,000 gigabyte update every Tuesday.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I think the same thing too. I think it's like really striking, and sometimes like maybe the detail isn't as like crazy as some of the single player stuff, like the more linear focused, or maybe the facial animations aren't like as industry leading, but it doesn't really matter because you look at it and you're like, this is really good. Like you look at it like this still does a pretty good job at doing everything. Like it just, man, some of those environments looks with the sun and everything.
Oh my God.
It's like
Like I think like Kurosawa mode is cool, but like why would you play this game in black and white?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
So
That's a second playthrough at best. Plus, it like makes combat encounters way harder because if, like you don't have like the color prompts. It's like, okay, yeah. I did it a few times. I flirted with it, and like the grainy kind of like audio or the muted audio and stuff too. I was like, this is cool, but yeah, I was like, nah, I'm doing like full on color because it's just so pretty. And then they have like a really expansive camera mode or photo mode that you can like change the time of day and all this other stuff, and it's like really nuts. Yeah, man, there's a few times I just kind of looked around, and not since like Horizon Zero Dawn, that game I felt like I'd walk through a forest in that game and I was like, oh my gosh, like I just gotta look around and like that's how I felt. Really, honestly,
it really was. The environment was one of the prettier environments I've seen in games for sure, because it really was one of those games that like you would get to like the top of a mountain and take a minute and just like look around, like do a full 360, just see what you can see, go into camp, like photo mode for a bit. And like, I loved, because like, obviously you have the different attire that you would wear and they would have different perks. So naturally when you're just running around and, you know, riding your horse everywhere, I would always rock the traveler's attire because it would expand the fog that you would open up in the map. But also too, like the traveler's attire, like I loved the way it would blow in the wind, and I love like the different customizations that you can get at like merchants, or like you'll unlock as you kind of go along. So like you can kind of do like different colors, then you can mix and match like the hats. Like for a while, I was a big straw hat guy. I had the patchwork straw hat. That was my go-to.
Wait, like the flat brimmed one? With
the big flat. Yeah, the big flat one. And then I did, once I got like the Sakai armor, I just rocked, and I maxed out the Sakai armor. I would just rock the helmet because I loved the way the helmet looked.
Steve, it's like we played the same thing. I had that. Okay, so I got the Adachi clan armor, or just like samurai clan armor, and I leveled that all the way up, and it was like red and white or whatever.
Oh,
so
that thing.
I was like,
that was one of my favorites because it would increase your resolve, like if you took hits.
Yes.
So like if you're in combat taking hits, like, oh, there we go, I got resolve, I'm good.
Oh, and it like reduced a bunch of damage and stuff too. So I had that I had the patchwork hat on, which I loved. The only issue I had with that was two funny things. First off, I'm sure it doesn't mean this, but every time I looked at the top of the hat, I was reminded of Switzerland. I think it's flipped, or the colors, because it's like a red or white cross or something. But then also, like you'd squeeze through a place, and your hat would be like, I'm just clipping through this. It was like, I'm not even gonna try. It was just like, which is fine. But I loved that hat because I wanted, and I couldn't find one like they have the straw hat, like the regular kind of conical one, but it's kind of messed up. I wanted like a bigger one that was just like that shape and was not like all destroyed, because that was like the patchwork was like the closest one I could find.
There are a few others, because like there are ones like I'm sure you've seen that you'll just stumble upon something on like a stick and like you'll grab it. So like there's some like that out there, and there's one that's kind of like covers like your whole face. Okay. It's pretty wild.
Dang, yeah, I loved having that on during the cutscenes though. Not necessarily the masks, because I like the masks, but it did seem kind of weird to have them on. But the hat, sometimes he would have it so low that you couldn't see his eyes, and it made some of the shots look really like kind of cool and cinematic. Where you're like, whoa, even more so because the way they
especially in duels. Oh,
dude, how you start the duels with the whole like click out with your thumb, like come on.
I love it.
I was like, guys, did you like invade my brain? I'm like, this is incredible. But yeah, I loved that look, and at the end I got the red ghost armor, and then put that hat back on, and I was like, okay, now I feel like a true like scary dude. I was like, look at me now. But I like the Sakai clan armor too, like up in your kill streak, and just like the black kind of talons or scale look it had about it. I was this looks so cool. And with the antlers, I loved it because I see deer a lot, and later on there was like a tip or something that said like, you know, it's frowned upon on the island to actually hunt deer because they're considered sacred. And I'd never done that in the first place. And I was like, well, thank goodness. Because that's all I need is another lecture from Shimura back in the past. It was like, we never kill a deer if we don't have to. I'd be like, oh, God dang it, Uncle, I'm sorry. Yeah,
plenty of boars though.
Oh, so many boars.
They're aggressive.
They're very aggressive. And
once I found out I could just swipe them from my horse, I was like, oh, this is way easier.
Exactly. The dogs too. I was gonna look into this because I'm a dog guy, as you guys know, and you are too, Steve. Yes. I have to look in to see if this is the breed I'm thinking of that they brought over. I don't think it is, because like the breed I'm thinking of is like way bigger than the dog they had in this game. Because I was like, this doesn't look like the right size. And again, I'm nitpicking because I couldn't find other things I didn't like about it.
Yeah.
I was like having a hard time, and I get it, and I'm really biased towards this type of game, like open world and, samurai, Japanese culture and stuff. And even if it isn't right with like the haikus and stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, it feels like this game. Like I love pretty much everything in it, and I don't know, it just felt nice to play a game for once where I wasn't like, hey, I love it, but I really hate this one major factor of the game. Like, I love Red Dead Redemption 2. I just hate how it controls. Like, stuff like that.
I'd love a new game plus, but I love that they're adding that multiplayer, like that co-op ghost mode. Like, that sounds awesome. I can't wait to do that.
If I had PS Plus, I keep telling people that, I'm like, oh god, like I just like, but that popped up and I was like, oh great, so I can't even complain about co-op anymore because they made the game and they're like, hey, we're gonna add co-op later. It wasn't a focus right away, but it's coming. It's like,
you might have to get PS Plus for that one.
I don't know. Maybe I will do like a trial. Be like, all right, Steve, let's hop on. Let's do some work. Like back to back, dude. Because there's a few times when you're fighting alongside your allies in the game. I was like, oh god, like,
it's so cool.
So cool. But if you did it with a buddy, oh my gosh. Yeah, I really like it. And the thing for me, weirdly, is usually after a game like this, I'm like, dude, let's get that sequel going. For this, I honestly don't want one. I know they've teased it. I know.
There's definitely going to be. Like maybe, I feel like they might try to go like DLC route at some point because obviously, like, I mean, with Infamous, they did the Festival of Blood. That was a very good one, and then First Light was incredible. Like, I thought that was honestly it was a better story than the original Second Son game.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I wouldn't be surprised, like, on top of the multiplayer, if they add in like some additional stuff. I'd expect like a new game plus to get added at some point because, like, I feel like that's just everywhere now. Cool. Like every game will have one. But I can definitely see this becoming a franchise because I feel like they might have exhausted themselves with Infamous a little bit.
Sure.
So this could be a nice change of pace.
Well, it's the reason I say this is because I would love the DLCs. I'd love that. I'd love them to go attack, Mongolia like they kind of talked about at the end. I was like, yeah, it's kind of like the next step, right? But I think, and from what they've said in the past, it was between samurais, pirates, or maybe like musketeers. What if they just decide to go the Ubisoft route, Steve, and they just start they're like, you know what? We're going to make better period piece open worlds than anybody else. And they just start like every new game has like the core like mechanics kind of, but then it's like a completely different situation. Cause like all I was thinking, I like who would make a musketeer game? Like that would be so cool. And like for me, I just don't know how much more you could do in this world and what you've done to like expand. Like there are obviously like there are things they could make better and like, people talk about like wanting the Legend of Zelda, like, paraglider thing at the top of mountains, but they have like an auto descend from like shrine if you go up too high and stuff. But like for me, I just want to see what else they could do. Like if they made a pirate game, that game would be nuts, especially with this combat mechanic. Like, oh my gosh, like I don't know. It seems so
definitely options. Like that's the thing is like this could just be its own thing, and like you wouldn't need a sequel. But I wouldn't hate if they had a sequel.
Sure. Oh yeah, I wouldn't hate it either. It's kind of like with like Last of Us. It's like, I feel like this thing is a complete one-off. It could be totally fine by itself. Or like even Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones. They made sequels that some of them I really enjoy. So I'm like, you know what? If you want to make a sequel, go for it. I just don't want them to feel like they need to be like, all right, you made a really good thing. You have to do this again. Because I just don't want it to be, like, oh, we got to do the lightning guy again. And now we're going to do somebody else who's got like smoke powers. But also don't tell anyone he's got video and concrete powers. And that we can't talk about that in the reviews. And it's like, does anybody really care? It's like, guys, it's like, I just want you to be able to make a game, whatever you're passionate about. And if it's still, Japan and that, great. But if they want to make something else, like, man, please let them. Because, like, they've just proven that they can do it, which is insane. It's like,
seriously, that's the thing is they have a lot of trust. Because, I mean, they have a pretty good record here, obviously with Infamous this, but then of course Sly Cooper.
Oh man, yeah.
So like they have a pretty diverse portfolio there where they've done some different things. Clearly they got the idea of the open world game down. I mean, Infamous and Ghost were both fantastic open worlds, where this was a nice change of pace where it wasn't so map heavy and icon heavy and you got to go this way and we'll show you exactly where to go. It was very much more, why don't you go explore and find what you can find. So I loved that. So like honestly, now that you like, the more you've said it, you kind of sold me. I would like to see them do something different because I think they can, and I think they do good. And like, I don't know, sequels are great. Like, I'm very excited for PS5 because we know we get like Horizon 2, God of War 2, Spider-Man 2. Like, we know we get like a bunch of good sequels like lined up, ready to go. But at the same time, you're like, I wonder what like some of these guys could do with like different things, you know? So it's weird. It's like a catch-22 because like, you know, you're going to like this, but what could they do with something different?
Sure. And I wonder if that's a consideration with Sony. And I don't know if they, you know, have the mandate where they could just come into, you know, Sucker Punch and be like, you guys are making, you know, 2 more of these at least. But if we know right now the kind of plan potentially for God of War is like to make 5 more or something or crazy like that, and Horizon maybe could be in a similar boat. I wonder if there's ever been a question of like, hey, you guys can make this game if it does well. If you want to make another, you can. If you want to make something else, go for it. I just hope that like that's a, you know, Sony's thinking about that with PlayStation, where it's not just like, it's just sequels. It's just sequels. Because I love sequels, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, we've seen so much creativity and passion pour out of these companies when it's completely different. Or even if it is another open world and just being like, yeah, so our character has kind of some superpowers, but you really don't use them all that often. And like he's more of like a mortal man who's just really, really strong and scary, you know? Mm-hmm. Like I can't even imagine what they would do with some of that stuff. And I would love to see them take a crack at pirates, because since Black Flag, you know, and Rogue, we haven't really had anything. A Musketeer game would be bonkers. Like, it'd be like, we got rapiers and pistols and stuff. It would just be, I just think it'd be so cool. But either way, if they make another one, great. If they make something completely different, great. Either way, Sucker Punch for me has always been like, I really enjoyed Sly Cooper. I enjoyed Infamous enough, and they were a company that I enjoyed to a certain extent. This has like cemented them in my mind as being like one of my new like just like solid favorites from like, you guys did it. Like, you freaking did it. You launched a game. It didn't have like a ton of problems. Like, it just came out. They weren't like, oh, if you want to have more resolve for Jin, it's $19.99. You know, it's like, no, they just like, it's just the game. It's just, there it is. Isn't that nice? How often does that happen?
That's why I enjoy single player games.
yeah, exactly. And that's I love both, but it's just nice that like, I'm trying to remember the last big single player, I guess Final Fantasy VII Remake, but it's so, I shouldn't compare the two because they're so different.
Yeah.
But like, this one just seems like, you know, just something so special, you know, to me. Like, Remake is great in its own way, but it's got issues. This one was just like, wow, like there's just so much, like no hindrance. There wasn't like, oh, if you're going to make Ghost of Tsushima, you have to have this, and this. It's like, make whatever you want. Do whatever you want. Yeah. So, yeah, I love it. I think it's one of my favorite games, and I think it's honestly one of the best games of this generation. If I had to tell people to get PlayStation 4 today, I'd be like, pick this game up with God of War and Horizon, and you're gonna have a good time.
It is pretty wild that the end of the year, the last year of this console generation, you get Last of Us 2 and then Ghost of Tsushima a month apart.
I don't know why. I feel like they're not probably cannibalizing sales or anything, because I think they both sold really well. But it's just like, was there ever a chance? I know they keep getting pushed back, but it's like, just separate them out just a little bit, because I haven't played Last of Us Part 2 yet. Because I was like, I'd rather play this. I'd honestly rather play this. Like, and
it's a very, very different experience for sure.
For sure. Well, and also too, I was like, you know, it's kind of a rough time, and like, I don't know, like I was just like, I just want something a little different, and I do want to go back and play Last of Us, because that's a game that it's controversial, but still, we have the only other game I think, unless Watch Dogs Legion or Assassin's Creed Valhalla is like just incredible, like blows your mind. You kind of know what to expect with those. I think Cyberpunk might be the last, like, all right, Ghost, like, here's another single player experience that's incredibly polished in its own thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very, very curious to see what the conversation around Cyberpunk is going to be when it releases. I think it's weird. I honestly, like, I don't have words for it right now, because like there's so much about Cyberpunk that we still kind of don't know. Like, we've seen some cool stuff, but like, what are the chances it gets delayed again? I feel like those chances are pretty good, because it's been delayed like 4 times.
Sure.
I don't know. I am like, that is one of those games that I have a feeling I'll probably enjoy. I got to tell you, like, I got kind of bored with The Witcher. Like, I feel like that might be blasphemy to some people, dude, but like,
fine. It's your opinion.
Yeah, I was playing like The Witcher 3, and I remember like a few hours in, I was probably like 10 or 15 hours in, I was just like, I feel like I'm just doing the same thing. Like, I'm always in these menus. The combat's kind of, it is what it is. and like I just got bored with it. And I know like it's a great game, and like the from what I played, I could see the story, like the story beats and like exploring and finding a bunch of side quests is cool. But after a little bit, I was like, I don't like the repetition of this. Like
Sure.
the loop that I'm in is not very fun.
Sure.
And so I'm kind of hoping that Cyberpunk is different than that. Like if it's super menu heavy again, I don't think I'm going to be like that much into it. I don't know. It's weird. Like that one, I feel like I should be like super excited for, because it's like this amazing game with so much you can do. But I'm having a really tough time getting very amped for Cyberpunk.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I wonder if because of like the lack of being like a very solidified character in V, like they had with Geralt back in Witcher, will allow for you to kind of do things differently. And even if you do the same,
I hope so.
Yeah, if you do the same mission types, you might be like, well, this time I'm going to be really crazy about it, or this time I'm going to try to be more subtle about it, or this one I'm just going to try to talk my way through it. Like maybe that'll be it, because like.
Yeah, there's different character types.
Yeah, if it feels good, though, like we proved with Ghost of Tsushima, like, I'll just keep taking out these camps forever because the combat felt so good. So if the gunplay, and I know they said this recently for Cyberpunk, they didn't feel good about the melee combat, and that's not why they delayed it a couple of months. Like, not just for that, but just for the love of... I know CD Projekt Red, you're listening. Just try to make the katana feel even just a little bit like the one from Ghost of Tsushima. It's like, please, because like I want to use that so badly, and I want it to be good. But no, I understand that. And Witcher was also just like a massive game. So if you didn't like it in the first couple hours, it wasn't like, oh, in the 20-hour mark, it gets really good. Like anytime somebody says that with a game or like a TV show, they're like, but the 6th episode, it gets really good. I'm like, no, I'm like, it should be good from the get-go. Like it shouldn't be like I have to put in like hours of my life. So yeah, I hear you, man. It's gotta launch in November, right? Like it has to come out with the new consoles. Like if it doesn't, it's gonna be like, what are you doing? Like you're killing me, Cyberpunk. So I hope it comes out. I'm hopeful. This is like I said, like the 3rd or 4th time it's been delayed. So we'll see.
We'll see. That's the video game industry. We'll see.
Exactly. Nowadays, anytime they're just, I love that they stopped doing quarters on stuff. Like the new reveals from DC fandom, they're just like 2022. I'm not gonna give you a date. Like,
especially right now. They're like, who the hell knows?
Yeah,
like, this will come out when it comes out.
I love it now because it used to be so specific. It used to be like April 27th. Mark your calendar. Now it's just like, I wish they just start putting question marks or just parentheses. And they're like, April, like Q2, like or something like that. But man, I I think it's so funny. Anyway, Steve, do you have any final thoughts on Ghost of Tsushima before we start to wrap up the show?
No, overall, I really enjoyed it. So if you're into like Sucker Punch games, if you're into samurai style combat, stealth games, give it a shot. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, does it rank for you as one of your favorite PlayStation games, or is it still maybe not? Like maybe top?
Oh no, it's definitely up there. Like it's tough too because like it could be like recency bias, but the way I look at it, it was one of those games that I actually wanted to get the platinum for.
Yeah.
Because it was an attainable platinum. That is one of the only ways you'll ever get me to get your platinum trophy, video game developers. But two, and then D. Home Alone joke for anybody listening. I also just enjoyed the fact that I lost my train of thought. What were we saying? Jesus.
Best games of this generation.
The best games of this generation. Yeah, so like I kept playing because I wanted to keep getting all of the trophies. Like it was one of those games that I really didn't want to put down. And if there was a new game plus, I probably would have started it right away. Yep. And so I'm really happy that they're doing multiplayer because like I will take any reason to go back into that world and start playing again. And if I can play with friends, that's even better.
Yeah, I hope New Game Plus is a thing because starting from scratch, I was like, wow, I've grown really like weak, or also I've just relied too much on some of my abilities and my health pool and my resolve. Because like I was getting messed up. I'm like, I can't fall back on some of these other techniques that I do not have, or these other items. But yeah, like if I could akin it to anything, it'd be like Spider-Man for 2018. The mechanics were so much fun that I would do things, and this game didn't have as much as Spider-Man did. I will do things in this game that I am not like crazy about just because I like the game and how it feels that much. In Spider-Man, I was collecting flipping gas or whatever. It was swinging around, and that was like a fun thing for me, even though it was super like annoying to do. I was like,
oh, those ones, the research stations,
forget that noise.
It's like, shut up, Harry.
But like, yeah, it was just like it just felt like a good single player thing that was just
Yeah.
all on its own, and it's just I think it's just incredible. I'm just excited that it was as good and it's better. And the funny thing is, it's not, like you said before, it's not reinventing the wheel. It's pretty straightforward. There's not like a bunch of like cool gimmicks where it's like, someone's gonna invade you and try to kill you, or like, sometimes the game world flips upside down. It's none of that. It's just like, it's just the game. Like,
yeah, it was great.
There you go. So
loved it.
Yeah, we both recommend it, and please go check it out if you haven't already. If you need to see a little bit more about it, like I said, I've got a review up that you can go check out. Also, I've done some streams of it, so you could probably catch some of that, some clips of me doing a lot of this, like yelling and screaming, because there's a moment that I really liked, like legitimately spoke to me. I will not react that way for like anything if I don't really feel that way, but looking back at it, I was like, yeah, I remember these moments of being like, oh my gosh. But yeah, it's so freaking good. Go check it out. But we're gonna start to wind down the show here with a little segment that we like to call Time Killers. That's stuff we've been killing time with, like the games, like Ghost of Tsushima, or movies or TV shows. But people hear me talk about stuff all the time. Steve, we want new perspective. What have you been killing time with, buddy?
All types of stuff. So I watched that documentary on Netflix, High Score, the video game documentary series.
I just started that. Okay.
Yeah, it's really good. I enjoyed it. Like, it was cool because obviously it does play on like the nostalgia, but I also learned a ton of stuff that I didn't know. And I think that this one does a very good job of focusing, especially in their interviews with people that you wouldn't normally see in like a lot of other like popular video game series. So I thought that was cool because you got to see a lot of different people in gaming, whether they be, tournament champions, whether they be game developers. I thought that was awesome. It was cool to see those different perspectives. So I loved it. I thought that was such a fun series. I just want more because I was like bummed that it ended. And I was like, no PlayStation, no N64, no Xbox talk. Like, well, whatever.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Did you get like a feeling there was a budget behind this show? Like there's a really big budget.
I think so,
there's so many transitions and so much color sometimes. I was watching it late last night. I was like, it was really pretty, but I was like, my eyes are going to explode. I was like, they did so many like little like 8-bit things. I was like, oh, this is really cool, but it's a lot to take in if you don't know video games. You're like, oh my gosh. Yeah,
that's what I thought was cool too, because they did a good job of being for a video game audience, but also being for an audience that doesn't know a lot about video games and wanted to kind of learn a little bit about it. Like they'll take some time to like stop and explain like what certain phrases mean and things like that. So overall, like, I loved it. I highly recommend anybody that is looking for a good video game documentary, go check out High Score. For some horror movies, I watched Host. It's that haunted Zoom movie. That was creepy. Okay. Like, I loved it because it's only like 57 minutes long. So shout out for a movie that's just like, here it is. We're going to get you in and out, give you our plot, give you our story beats. It's going to be great. But like, there were some really good jump scares. It was creepy. It was just one of those ones that like at the end of it kind of sits with you for a minute. So definitely recommend check out Host if you can. I also checked out Mandy finally, the Nick Cage movie. That was awesome. Just Nick Cage freaking out. One of like my favorite lines in the whole movie, because a little background on Mandy. Whole story is this weird cult basically like kidnaps him and his wife, and they kill the wife, and he goes on a murderous rampage. Mm-hmm. Her name is Mandy. Sure. And he's like going and killing these like weird cult people, and they like cut his shirt, and he just like screams out, "My shirt! My favorite shirt!" and just starts slicing them up. It's just Nick Cage at his Nick Cageiest. So definitely go check out that if you're a fan of horror. And then for video games, just started playing PGA 2K21 because I've been in the market for like a good golf sim since like the old Tiger Woods games. I love everybody's golf, but that's more of like a party game. Okay, I wanted one that's a little bit more like realistic, so I've been having a fun time with that. And then I finally, after like 2 years, I finally completely finished The Messenger. So I had finished like the first part of it like a year ago, and then I just kind of did a few things here and there, would pick it up every now and then. And like this past week, I was like, you know what? I don't have any like games to play right now. I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to play through it. And I got all the stuff. I finished all the other like prophecies to see like the true ending. And then I just now need to just do the Picnic Panic DLC. But that was a fun time. My thumb really hurts because like those platformer games are ruthless.
Yeah. Yeah, they can be really like, oh good, my thumbs are bleeding now. Like, I just like, I'm trying to think of the last game that I had that as a problem with, where you're like gripping the controller in such a way you're like, oh my gosh. I guess maybe Doom Eternal, I was playing that recently. I'm like, you gotta hit this, this, and this, and this, and this, and it's like, just keep run because the demons are coming. Dude. By the way, do you use Shudder to watch your horror films?
So I did a free week trial just to watch those. I was kind of like, I wasn't blown away by the library, so I was like, I can't really just like, I know it's like $6, but like, I already have so many streaming services with plenty of horror movies, so I was like, if I really like wanted one, maybe I'll just like get it for a month. But honestly, like there are some solid ones, but I don't know, like I just have too many options as it is. I already spend way too much time scrolling through movies without actually picking anything.
Yeah, I have that problem too, and also I have a Funimation like subscription I haven't used for like a month now, and I'm like, I gotta you gotta use these things. Like, why would you pay $6 for these things? I've been trying to like go back through Dragon Ball Z because I'd never actually like seen all of it, so I was like going through like because people are like, you gotta watch this, you gotta watch this. It's a really good show to like watch in conjunction with doing other things, because there's just a lot of yelling. So some of those episodes, I was like, you had to watch this week to week. I was like, no wonder they kept you around for so long. It was like this fight was 8 episodes. But yeah, well, cool, man. So you've been kind of busy with that stuff. That's great. You got like
that's good stuff.
That's good. Since last time I did this segment, which wasn't long ago, I just rewatched The Boys to prep for season 2 on Amazon. Great show. If you're into superhero killing, I would highly recommend also checking out.
Oh yeah, season 2 comes out next Friday.
I know. I haven't seen the trailer. I know one thing from the trailer, but I'm just excited to go into it because Carl Urban, just man, he's so good. He's such an underrated just actor, I think. But anyway, if you like that sort of thing, for some reason it's just been like superhero killing like in the background for me, because I've been reading this book series called Steelheart, which was sent to me by one of our Legionnaires. It's this Brandon Sanderson trilogy about what if superheroes just kind of showed up like one day because of a thing in the sky, and some people just turned into or had superpowers, and then they all became evil, and like how would you deal with that? There's that, and there was one other thing. It's probably the Suicide Squad stuff that I've been looking at recently. It's a lot of like, what if the good guys were bad guys and they had to kill superheroes and stuff? Like, there's still like a weird market for that kind of thing right now. So yeah, man. But I'm excited for Boys season 2, even though that show is like, man, it's such a weird show. There's like some funny stuff, some really like horrible stuff. There's some stuff that doesn't land at all. Like, it's all over the place. And I love it because I was like, I had heard on Twitter, like I was telling people I was watching it, and some people were like, yeah, it gets like a little too like perverted sometimes. And I was like, oh yeah. And going back and watching it, I was like, yeah, there's some pretty messed up stuff in there. You're like, okay, like, so I'm sure season 2 will definitely not have any of that. Yeah, I totally will. Like, I'm probably.
Oh yeah, I remember like the first scene is like when the guy like runs through like his girlfriend.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's what I was like. This show is awesome.
Yeah, that stuff I like. It was more of like there's a lot of like implications or weird stuff, or like what if like there was a changeling and it was a woman and it turned into a man, and then you took like pictures of like this like there's just like a lot of like weird you have to watch the show to understand how like crazy and strange it is, but also it's like hyper cynical about like corporate America and like if a bunch of superheroes worked for like a mega corporation, how they would have to like live day to day, and they're like, this is the PR thing, you can't do this, and they're like, but I want to like help, and they're like, you can't.
This is exactly how superheroes would be if they existed. They would absolutely be corporatized.
Yeah, oh for sure. Yeah, and just like the whole plot, like the main plot for like the main bad guys is like trying to get them in the military, because then they could just make even more money. And then just like for people who haven't watched it yet, if you have like, and the show doesn't have a ton of special effects. It does it once in a while. They trick you into thinking that there's more in the show because they have such great actors, and the way they talk to each other is so compelling. But then there's like in the beginning of the final episode, the superhero allegory Homelander goes basically to help out like overseas on like a Black Ops mission, and you see what somebody like that could do against people who have just normal firearms.
Yeah.
And you're like, you're like,
all right.
You're like, okay, they don't like. You're not going to see that in a lot of like the DC or Marvel movies. They're not going to be like, oh, this is what it would be like. They might ask questions like that, like in Civil War, but not like this. This is like,
yeah, and that's why I've always been a fan of Suicide Squad. Like the comics, obviously, the Suicide Squad movie was not great. I'm looking forward to the new one though. That one looks pretty good. However, like the comics are great because like that does strike me as like this is how people would operate if like superhumans were alive. Like they would try to control them and corporatize them like one way or the other.
Yeah, and it's like celebrity to like the craziest status because like they're basic, and like some of them, like one in particular, Homelander, kind of see themselves as like a living god and talks to people that way, and like how he treats people is very like, I could kill all of you at any second, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an interesting change up, and like I keep plugging this, but I did this video recently about Hyperion, which is basically Homelander if he was in like Marvel stuff, and it's a character that already exists, and I really want Marvel to make a movie about this because I think evil Superman is so compelling, because like evil other characters are pretty good, but what if you take the most powerful being who's like the nicest guy and you're like, that's a bad guy, and you're like, or when they did like Red Sun or whatever it was, where it's like, what if Clark inadvertently crashed in Soviet Russia and he grew up and he had like, and he was all for communism and stuff, and it's like how different the world would be, how DC world would be if Superman was worked for the Russians. Like it's such a fascinating idea. So yeah, it's just interesting stuff. So Boys season 2, man, that's what this episode is not brought to you by. I wish it were, because I totally would. I'd sell out pretty quick. I'd be like, yeah, watch Boys, it's great, it's actually a good show. Amazon's got some good things on there. I don't know if you checked out some of the other things, Steve, but
I love the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. That's one of my favorite shows.
Have we talked about that? That show's incredible. Oh,
I still gotta watch season 3. I'm just like really slacking on that, but I love that show. It's so funny.
It's so binge worthy, especially season 3. Like, okay, my recommendation, Steve, maybe don't watch it until season 4 is like right around the corner, because I watched like that whole like 3 seasons in a couple of days because I was like, this is incredible, and then like it's like season 4 coming whatever, and I'm just like, oh no. But yeah, Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, man. Jack Reacher's pretty good. I don't know if you checked that out. Did we talk about that one?
I did not watch that one, no.
Okay, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. A lot of people are like, I can't see Jim from The Office being like a super spy. He does a good job. He does a really great job. John Krasinski's good. Anyway, let's just wind it down here. Last segment of the show, my personal favorite, which is community feedback and questions. And Steve, we got a little bit of feedback here about Ghost of Tsushima, because I asked people about this, because I was like, I was kind of curious. This one comes in from Arctic Anarchy via our Discord. He said, as for a thought on Ghost of Tsushima, I just got through the first act, and I feel like the game is actually starting now. Definitely starts on the slower side story-wise. Can't wait to see how it develops. Oh my gosh. I just can't wait for the rest of that to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I agree. Like, I've heard this criticism a lot. It's like people feel like the first act doesn't really like... It doesn't feel like the rest of the game feels. And I mean, I don't know. I had fun. It's tough for me to say, because I had fun in the first act. I was like, I enjoyed like going around, breaking up some of the stuff, and like, especially like after you do the first act, then you go to the second area, and they're like, oh, here's a reason to go back there. All of the farms are on fire. It's like, oh, cool. I gotta go clear those out now.
Oh, totally.
So yeah, but I can see that first act's a little bit slower.
Sure. Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. And again, as somebody who's going back to play that first act again, I'm like, yeah, it is a little bit slower. And if you don't have all those abilities, sometimes you're like, these fights are so hard. But yeah, I'm excited. Arctic Anarchy, I hope you come back and let us know how that goes, because I'd love to hear your progress through it. We have actually a question here. This one comes in from Zora Caviar. He asks us, via our Discord again, just on Nintendo is now Japan's richest company. Not just video game company, but company, period. Crazy. Wow. What are they doing so right? Man, they're selling fun, man. I feel like they're selling fun on the go in like a high def way. Like,
what they're also doing is never lowering their prices on any of their products.
Yeah, no,
like Breath of the Wild is still full price.
Yeah, which is funny because like that game I'm okay with, but then like I wonder if like Paper Mario, that new one that came out, Origami King, like in a few months, does that need to still be full price? You know what I mean?
And then like the Switch hasn't seen a price reduction. Yeah, sure, you have like the portable only one, but obviously you can't dock that. And like half the fun of a Switch is the ability to switch between portable and docked.
Yeah.
So like they don't lower their prices, and they're Nintendo. They are synonymous with video games, because any generation, like if you talk to like our parents, like that's what they would think is like the video game. Like that's what they think that we're only playing on. Oh, you play on Nintendo? It's like, no, there are other video game systems now, but it's just like that's they are video games. I don't know. Like Nintendo just is the industry.
Yeah, well, I also think too. You're totally right. It's weird because here in the West, I think Nintendo, for the people who are like really big into following games, Nintendo seems like this kind of. And I've always said I'd say this about them, and it's not supposed to be mean, but they're like if they were kids in a classroom, Nintendo's off in the corner making whatever art he wants to make. And he just kind of shows up and you're like, oh, that's actually pretty good. And you're like, you didn't pay attention for the past 50 minutes, but you just kind of did your own thing. Nintendo just does their own thing. And they dominate the Japanese market. And with the Wii and now the Switch, like the Wii U obviously had issues, but they've always been prevalent, or they've been prevalent for so long in the Western market too. When this stuff comes around, it's that thing, you see it. And you're like, oh, I want that thing. It's like the Game Boy. Because if you get a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, you don't carry it around with you everywhere. It's not marketing itself constantly, whereas the Switch totally can. Because if you see the Switch at a cafe or something, you're like, what is that thing? I really like it. And it's not like a tablet or something. And it's like, no. And then I take it home and I put it in this thing and it comes up on my TV. Like, Nintendo, I think they know what they're doing. And they have such a firm grip, too, on their own intellectual property. Like, they're not going to screw around with that. They're not going to try to, like, sully the name of Link or Mario. They're just like, nope. We might put them in weird games of our own make, but not other strange things often. Once in a while, you get Link and Soul Calibur or something, but not that,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that makes perfect sense as to why they're the richest company in Japan. But that's nuts. Like, they've overtaken other tech stuff. Like, that's bonkers to me, right? Like, is that really true? Are they bigger than
video games are cool,
Video games are cool. They're so cool. And right now too, I bet some of that stuff went up just because people are
oh my god,
I'm just, Animal Crossing. I don't know about the DLC stuff or if they have microtransactions in Animal Crossing, but I can only imagine if there are any that those were way higher.
Oh yeah.
Like people were buying them like crazy, like anything, I need anything. So yeah, all we need now is another Mario or another Zelda to kind of and to figure out what's going on with Metroid Prime 4, because they scrapped it and they started over, and we just need to know what's going on. I'm not even a huge Metroid guy, but I still am like, I'm curious to know.
I don't know why they haven't had just like the trilogy remastered on Switch either. I don't know. Whatever.
Sure. They'll get to
it. Again, they're doing their own thing.
They're doing their own thing. Yeah, totally. This question comes in from me, Steve, because we talked about DC fandom the other day. I want to know, like, for you, what was your favorite thing that you've seen from that, if you've caught up on any of that at all?
The Batman trailer looks great. I think it's amazing that they've only shot 25% of that movie.
I know, it's so funny. It's like
Pattinson, like I when he was announced, I had no doubt that he was going to be fine, because like it's a younger Bruce, it's a year 2 Batman story. So I thought like he was going to be fine. The pictures came out a few months back of him in the suit. It's like, it looks all right. And then like actually seeing him in action, like that beatdown, I was like, all right, that guy just asked you your name and like you paralyzed him. But okay, Bats.
Yeah.
So, but I thought that was awesome. I was just like, oh, so this is like young, like not refined Batman. So I think that's cool. The quick shots of like Colin Farrell as Penguin, he's unrecognizable.
Yeah.
Like, it's incredible. I love when Colin Farrell like plays some of these weirder roles, because he's such a good actor. And when he really gives into like some of the weirdness, he's honestly like, he's tough to compete with when he's like doing some of those crazy roles. So I'm really looking forward to that. And of course, Paul Dano as the Riddler, like I don't think you could have had a more perfect casting. Like he's so good. So I love that. Obviously Jeffrey Wright too as Gordon. I think he's going to be like the best Gordon we've ever had. Because I don't think Gordon gets, like, obviously, like, what was it? Gary Oldman. He was great in the Dark Knight trilogy.
So good.
But, like, I feel like Jeffrey Wright just has, like, that Gordon voice.
Sure.
Oh, man, it's just going back to, like, the Batman animated series where, like, that iconic kind of, like, tired, like, oh man, like this city has really, really worn me out, but there's this little ray of hope in this weird guy in a bat suit.
Yeah.
So I love like how he kind of brings that energy to it in the brief little bit that we saw with him on camera. Like I love his presence. Like he's so good in Westworld. He was great in that movie on HBO, the OG. Like anything he's in, I will watch. And then Gotham Knights, I think that game looks so cool.
Yeah.
Because like this is a fun way to I also think it's weird that it's not connected to the Arkham universe, but it definitely seems like it takes place after Arkham Knight. So that's weird. And then Suicide Squad is in the Arkham universe, whatever. It's all very confusing, but I think Gotham Knights looks great. It's not a games as a service. It's just an open world game. You could do co-op. Like I love these like little co-op opportunities that we're kind of getting while still keeping the premise of a single world game, single player game. Because obviously Avengers comes out, next week. I'm still on the fence about that. I probably will get it, but I don't know. I liked what I saw with Gotham Knights, though. I think the game looks great. I think the combat changing between the people, it looks very similar to what we've seen in the Arkham series, but I think it's probably going to be a little bit more fluid, probably see some more combos. And I love that it's a focus on the Bat family, because I think there's a lot of great characters there. And like you got Red Hood, Jason Todd, who's like coming back from like a forced resurrection. So like he's going to be pretty upset. Yeah. And then you got Nightwing, you got Batgirl, so like playing as her, because there was that DLC, and I think it was Arkham City or Arkham Knight.
One of them,
one of those. Yeah, so you got to play as her as a bit. So I think it's cool that you get to play as her more. It's just going to be like a lot of fun. I feel like you're going to get to see more of the villains like in the Batman universe. And I do think Suicide Squad looks cool for sure. Like I think that'll be a fun one. Obviously, like the King Shark, he's just got all the memes right now.
Yeah.
He's really hot in the streets, but I think Suicide Squad will be fun because if it is connected to the Arkham universe, I love the idea that like Superman's not being cool right now. Cause like I've always thought very much like Batman thinks of Superman, where it's like, I don't think we can trust this guy. He's an alien who can literally kill us all.
Sure.
So I like that the Suicide Squad's going that road. So Batman, Gotham Knights, Suicide Squad all look good. Wonder Woman, that trailer looked amazing. Mm-hmm. I wish we saw like an actual something of Black Adam other than just like The Rock voicing over still. I think he definitely fits the Black Adam role. So I love The Rock. So like I'll go see it. But then also Shazam 2 getting announced because I love Shazam. I thought that has been the best DC movie of the recent batch. Mm-hmm. Just because it was such a delight from start to finish. So honestly, I left that feeling excited about DC for the first time in a good while.
Yeah, that's good. I want to ask you this too. How do you feel about and we probably talked about this before, how do you feel about cinematic trailers for games versus like gameplay trailers? Because I enjoy both, but as I've said to people recently, I've just been burned a lot on cinematic trailers. Yeah. So like after seeing this for Suicide Squad, like do you like cinematic trailers a lot, or are you kind of more hesitant when you see stuff?
I like them both because I think there's a time and a place for both. I think it depends on where you are in the game cycle. Like Gotham Knights was very ready to be like, we're coming out next year. Like this game is coming out 2021. Here is the gameplay. This is where we're at so far. So when you're like in that stage where you're getting closer to a release where you can actually put a release window, obviously now the windows are getting much bigger.
Yeah.
But you're able to kind of like put a stamp on it. Like this is when the game is coming out. Then you should be in the stage where you can show some type of gameplay. That's why I remember back, what was it, last E3 when the Avengers showed that cinematic trailer and they were like, oh, this game's like what, a year away, and like this is the best we got.
Yeah.
A lot of uproar. And so like Suicide Squad, I can't remember, did they give us a release date, or was it like 2022?
2022, yeah.
So that's 2 years out. Yeah. So I'm okay with a cinematic trailer now because it gave us a basic idea of what we can expect the plot to be.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, they're going to have the gameplay, and that's another one. Like Rocksteady, they have my trust. Like WB Montreal, like they have my trust. So like with those ones, I'm not as interested. But like with Square Enix, when they're showing, questionable looking character models and it's all cinematic, that's when you're like, all right, this game's like a year out, and you're trying to get people to buy in, but what are you showing us? So I think there's a time and a place for both.
Sure. Yeah, I think I'm just like, for me, I just want it to be Overwatch for everything. I want it to be cinematic trailer, gameplay trailer, and then playable at the event. But like, not everything could be that. And Suicide Squad has been just so teased for so long. I was just really hoping that like we'd have just a little something. But it's weird because like I know you said that Gotham Knights is probably just going to be co-op open world. I still think they'll treat it a little games as a servicey, or like DLC stuff is like, I feel like it's so primed for that game where it's just like, if you wanted to buy Batman to play in the game, or if you wanted to buy like a certain character like Deathstroke, like they put him in to be like, you could buy him, it's not necessarily like we're gonna update the game constantly like that, but I could definitely see like DLC things down, and not that DLC is games and service, but I just think I'm like, between that and Suicide Squad, which I think really will be, I think Suicide Squad's to be a new division. I really think it is, because they said like good third person shooting. I was like, okay, that's cool. Like, just
it'll be interesting.
Yeah. But But yeah, I'm interested. I'm still interested. I just want to see it. I want to see more of it. But no Deathstroke either way. So you know what? I'm just so sad. He's doing his own thing. Oh, by the way, what did you think of the movie? Kind of behind the scenes thing for the Suicide Squad.
I thought that was pretty cool because it gave us like a little bit of an idea of like what his vision is.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get to see that often before a movie comes out. And obviously I think they're doing this because of how bad the first one was.
Well, sure.
I also love how like it's mostly the same cast except Will Smith and Jared Leto. So that's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's a money thing. I bet they were like, okay, we can bring them back, but that's going to cost a lot, or we could just like give.
I don't
the money. Like,
I don't think they wanted anything to do with Jared Leto again.
Yeah, I think that whole thing, and I get that he went full on for something completely different, but I think they do want to distance themselves, and that's why they're okay with having this universe exist, and then a completely different Joker universe exists, and a completely different the Batman universe exists. They're just like, it's fine.
It's
if they work, it's okay. Yeah. They never have to be the same.
It's like I don't care if the movie's good. I'll watch it. Just make a good movie, DC. It's all I care about.
Yeah, exactly. But I also think it too. Like I thought you were gonna say this. I think they showed off a lot of James Gunn to be like, to alongside the Zack Snyder cut stuff, that they could be like, this is James Gunn's vision. Here's James Gunn sitting here saying, this is my vision, and here's like the movie. It's not going to be like, oh, we did a bunch of reshoots and we did all this stuff. It's like, nope, this is the movie I really wanted to make, and I'm having a lot of fun doing it. So good on him, I say. Alice Braga from Queen of the South is in it. There's like 1,000 people in that movie. I was like, they kept naming people off. I'm like, oh my gosh. I was like, really? Because usually you see a roster like that in an animated film, like they name all the big names with this. I was like, you got all these people? I was like, and you're gonna kill probably almost all of them.
Well, I was just happy that they actually put King Shark in it, not Killer Croc. Yeah. Because like King Shark's the one in the comics, and he's hilarious. He's also, I love, because I watched the first 2 seasons. Well, the only 2 seasons. They haven't done season 3 yet, but the Harley Quinn show, and like King Shark is so funny in it. Like I mean,
good. Is it only on DC Universe or whatever that is?
No, it's on HBO Max as well.
Okay. Well, I just have to wait to have HBO Max for that Snyder cut, like the 4-hour, like the 1 hour 4-week thing, and then do that with the Harley Quinn stuff. Because I've heard the Harley Quinn show is really good. So
it's absolutely hysterical.
Okay.
The Bane character is because he just makes so many jokey references to like Bane from The Dark Knight Rises, and it's absolutely hysterical. Like there's one scene where he just like grabs a credit card and he just goes, "I will be this credit card's reckoning."
It's funny that you mentioned that because I saw like just a little brief clip of like Aquaman making a joke, and then a dolphin jumped up and he like high-fived the dolphin. I was like, oh yeah, what?
It's so funny. The Batman character is wicked funny. The Gordon character is a mess. They just treat him like an absolute washed up alcoholic psycho cop.
Excellent.
Oh my god, I can't recommend the Harley Quinn show enough. Like I think it truly is like one of the best like comic cartoons they've ever made.
Okay. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we'll never see that live action J.K. Simmons like crazy drunk Gordon commissioner thing probably ever.
No.
But Ben Affleck coming back as Batman for just a little bit in Flash, which
is so nuts. Weird. Like, it's just so weird.
You know what? Okay, whatever. Never say never, right? Like if he's good, if Ben's in a better place, I say get after it, Ben. I like it. Let's just because I'm interested to see if Robert Pattinson will be the new like Batman that goes into the Justice League, because like you could do 2. Just have one who's kind of doing the lower level stuff, and then you have like
they'll do some like Flashpoint thing. They'll some timelines. You know how it goes.
Timelines, exactly. Thank you, Steve, for talking today.
Of course,
this is so much fun, and thank you guys for listening. If you ever have a topic, a question, a thought, or whatever you want to send into the show, all you have to do is tweet the hashtag Critical Podcast. You can tweet at our official account on Twitter at GoCritical, or you can tweet at me personally. I'm JimmyGood013. However, if you want to tweet like a Terminator GIF or like a Metal Gear Solid GIF over at Steve, where can they find you?
I am at Hans Vermit, HANSVERMIT. Hans Vermit.
Hans Vermit. Should I ask?
It's from Always Sunny. It's a very, very obscure Always Sunny reference.
Gotcha. I just wanted to make sure. I was like, I just don't want to like not ask about it. And someone's like, you never even like followed up on that? Like, it's a strange thing. But anyway, like I said before, I appreciate you guys tuning in. I was talking about it earlier. I do stream over on Twitch, twitch.tv /critical reviews. We've got the links down below. We also have an Instagram, a Spreadshirt, a Facebook, all these things. We're on Spotify as well if you'd rather not just watch on YouTube. We're on Spotify and Google. Not Google Hangouts, on Google Play, which might be going away, turning to like YouTube Play, or I don't even know what's happening.
Who knows?
We're on a bunch of different things. Go check us out and let us know if you're listening. And the hashtag for this week will be hashtag Jinsakai. If you can spell it right, I'm going to be really impressed. But that's, yeah. Well, actually, I'm not going to tell you how to spell it. I'm going to see if you get it right. But yeah, I appreciate you guys tuning in. And if you want to support us monetarily, there's the subscriptions to Twitch or our Patreon. And you'll see if you're a $5 patron, you get the show early and you get your name up on the side. I hope I'm pointing to the right side, but it might have been flipped. So it's one of these sides. Just check it out. So thank you to all of our patrons. I appreciate you guys so much. And again, Steve, such a pleasure. I love having you on the show because like it just feels like an old friend, you know?
Yes, I appreciate the invite as always.
Oh my gosh. Well, if that's the case, then I'll just keep inviting you. If you enjoy the cookies I'm making, then I'll just keep baking. You know what I mean?
Sounds good.
Did I just that's a new catchphrase. Anyway,
yeah, there it is.
Thank you everybody for tuning in. And until next time, just remember to adapt and overcome. Bye. All right.